Horner is coming back to F1 after a secret deal revealed. Helmut gets exposed by Red Bull bosses, and Williams is looking good for 2026. The Formula One world just witnessed something absolutely shocking. After 20 years of controversy, outrageous comments, and unfiltered opinions, Helmut Marko is finally out at Red Bull Racing. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. This wasn't really his choice at all. What we're looking at here is the complete transformation of one of motorsport's most successful teams, and the brutal reality of corporate politics in modern Formula One. This story goes way deeper than just an 82-year-old Austrian deciding to retire. This is about power, control, and what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Let me paint you the picture of how Red Bull just executed one of the most calculated corporate maneuvers in recent F1 history, and why Helmut Marko never stood a chance once Christian Horner walked out that door. For 2 decades, Helmut Marko was untouchable at Red Bull, not because he was particularly diplomatic or corporate-friendly, but because he had something nobody else could claim: a direct line to Dietrich Mateschitz, Red Bull's founder and the man who bankrolled this entire Formula One adventure. Marko wasn't just another employee. He was Mateschitz's right-hand man in Formula One, his trusted advisor who could say whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And boy, did he take advantage of that privilege. While other team principals and advisors carefully managed their media interactions, Marko would grab any microphone thrust in front of him and just start talking. No PR handlers, no carefully scripted responses, just pure, unfiltered Helmut Marko. He'd reveal setup secrets, discuss internal team dynamics, and make comments that would send Red Bull's press officers into absolute panic mode. But here's the thing, it didn't matter. Marko answered directly to the parent company, not to the racing team. His contract was with Red Bull GmbH, which meant Christian Horner, despite being team principal, had zero authority over him. This created a fascinating dynamic where you had 2 strong personalities operating in the same space, both convinced they knew what was best for Red Bull's Formula One program. The tension was always there, simmering beneath the surface. Marko made it crystal clear that he considered himself senior to Horner in the Red Bull hierarchy, dating back to when he joined the team in early 2005. He wasn't about to defer to someone he viewed as his junior, regardless of job titles or organizational charts. Everything changed when Dietrich Mateschitz passed away in late 2022. Suddenly, Marko's protective shield was gone. The man who had given him carte blanche to operate however he wanted was no longer there to back him up. And that's when the cracks really started to show. What followed was a power struggle that would have made Shakespeare proud. You had Christian Horner, who had become the public face of Red Bull Racing, building his own power base and influence within the team. Then you had Helmut Marko, the old-school advisor who had been there from the beginning and wasn't about to step aside for anyone. Marko later revealed that he did everything possible to prevent Horner from consolidating control over the team. He was fighting tooth and nail to maintain his position and influence. But he was fighting against the tide of modern corporate culture that was slowly taking over Formula One. The 2025 season became the perfect storm. McLaren's dominance on track meant Red Bull was no longer winning races at will. The championship fight was slipping away, and suddenly all those internal conflicts that had been hidden by success were being exposed. Max Verstappen's future at the team became uncertain, and that's when Oliver Mintzlaff, Red Bull GmbH's CEO, decided enough was enough. The decision to remove Christian Horner was shocking to many, but it makes perfect sense when you understand what Red Bull was trying to achieve. They wanted to move away from the personality-driven culture that had defined the team for so long. As one senior source put it, they wanted the team to be about the car, not the man. Enter Laurent Mekies, the affable former Ferrari strategist who represented everything Red Bull wanted in their new corporate image. Professional, diplomatic, corporate-friendly. Basically everything Helmut Marko wasn't. Mekies reported directly to Mintzlaff, creating a clean chain of command that left no room for maverick operators. But here's where it gets really interesting. Marko initially thought he had won. Horner was gone. His biggest rival for influence within the team had been removed, and surely this meant his position was now secure. What he didn't realize was that he had just made himself the biggest remaining obstacle to Red Bull's corporate transformation. With Horner out of the picture, Marko's old-school approach stood out like a sore thumb. His impromptu media sessions without any Red Bull press officers present became even more problematic. His willingness to speak his mind on any topic, regardless of the consequences, was now completely at odds with the new direction the team wanted to take. And then Marko made the mistakes that sealed his fate. First, he started making unilateral decisions without consulting the new management structure. He told Isaac Hadjar about his promotion to Red Bull, signed Alex Dunn to the junior program, all without any involvement from Mekis or Mintzlaff. These weren't collaborative decisions made in the best interests of the team. They were the actions of someone who still believed he could operate independently. The message was clear. This is exactly what the removal of Horner was supposed to prevent. Red Bull didn't want individuals making the team about themselves, and here was Marko doing precisely that. Things got worse at the Singapore Grand Prix, where aspects of Marko's behavior in the paddock reportedly angered Chalerem Uvidya, the head of Red Bull's Thai majority shareholder. When you're upsetting the people who own the team, your days are numbered regardless of your track record. But the final straw came in Qatar, where Marko made some absolutely incendiary comments on live television. He suggested that Kimi Antonelli had intentionally made a mistake to help Lando Norris and damage Max Verstappen's championship hopes. These weren't heat-of-the-moment radio comments that could be quickly apologized for. These were calculated statements made to both television and print media. This was vintage Helmut Marko, the kind of controversial comment that had defined his media presence for 2 decades. But in Red Bull 2.0, there was no tolerance for this kind of loose cannon behavior. The new corporate structure demanded discipline, control, and message consistency. The writing was on the wall, but the way Red Bull handled Marko's departure reveals just how calculated this whole process was. Officially, the story is that Marko decided to leave Red Bull on his own terms, regardless of whether Verstappen won a 5th consecutive championship. The press release from the parent company even had Mintzlaff expressing regret at Marko's decision. But if you read between the lines, it's clear that this wasn't really Marko's choice at all. He had to make a phone call to Max Verstappen to explain his departure, describing the conversation as melancholic. If this was truly his decision, why did he seem to have no control over the timing of his exit or when the news would become public? The reality is that Marko's time at Red Bull was over the moment Christian Horner walked out that door. In a corporate environment focused on control and consistency, how could an uncontrollable maverick be allowed to continue operating? He represented everything the new Red Bull was trying to move away from. And now that he's out, the gloves are completely off. Marko has started hitting back at his former colleagues, making extraordinary attacks on Christian Horner in interviews. He's called the former team principal a liar, spoken about dirty games and fabrications, and generally done everything possible to burn bridges on his way out. This behavior probably violates the terms of his departure agreement, but Marko clearly doesn't care. He's already confirmed he has no interest in finding another role in Formula One, so what does he have to lose? He's received a substantial payout to leave quietly, but his decision to speak out could jeopardize that golden handshake. What makes this whole situation even more fascinating is how it contrasts with Christian Horner's post-departure behavior. While Marko is making explosive statements and burning bridges, Horner has maintained complete silence since his removal. This suggests he's far more inclined to honor whatever non-disclosure agreements he signed, or perhaps he's simply taking the higher road. The irony in all of this is that Marko thought he had won the war when Horner was removed. He believed that outlasting his biggest rival meant his position was secure. What he didn't understand was that he had simply remained standing a little longer on a battlefield that was being completely transformed around him. Red Bull's new corporate structure under Mekis and Mintzlaff, with the full backing of Helmut Marko, represents a fundamental shift in how the team operates. They have the complete confidence of the Verstappen family, which was crucial in making this transition possible. Max Verstappen had previously intervened to protect Marko when there were suggestions he might be suspended, but this time there was no such intervention. This tells us everything we need to know about how the new management structure has been received by Red Bull's most important asset. The Verstappens are comfortable with the new regime in a way they clearly weren't with the old power struggles between Horner and Marko. Looking at this whole saga, it's impossible not to see the broader implications for Formula One. This is what modern motorsport looks like: corporate, controlled, and completely intolerant of maverick behavior that might damage the brand or create unnecessary controversy. Gone are the days when teams would tolerate colorful characters who brought entertainment value but also brought headaches. Every statement is carefully managed, every media interaction is supervised, and there's no room for the kind of loose cannon approach that defined Helmut Marko's career. From Red Bull's perspective, this transformation was absolutely necessary. They couldn't continue to operate with competing power centers and uncontrolled messaging. They needed a clean, professional image that aligned with their corporate values and their ambitions for the future. But something valuable has been lost in this process. Marko's unfiltered approach provided genuine insight into how Formula One teams actually operate. His willingness to speak candidly about internal dynamics, technical choices, and strategic decisions gave fans access to information they would never get from carefully managed corporate communications. The sport is arguably more sanitized now, but it's also more professional and sustainable. Teams can't afford to have loose cannons potentially damaging their relationships with sponsors, partners, or regulatory bodies. The stakes are simply too high in modern Formula One for that kind of risk. What's particularly striking about this whole situation is how it demonstrates that success isn't enough to guarantee job security in modern Formula One. Helmut Marko played a crucial role in Red Bull's rise to become one of the most successful teams in the sport's history. His talent-spotting abilities helped identify and develop drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen. His strategic input contributed to multiple championship victories. But none of that mattered when his approach became incompatible with the new corporate culture. In the end, organizational fit trumped historical contribution, and that's a lesson that resonates far beyond Formula One. As we watch Red Bull move forward under their new management structure, it will be fascinating to see whether this corporate transformation translates into continued success on track. They've eliminated the internal conflicts and power struggles that were undermining the team, but they've also lost some of the maverick spirit that contributed to their rise. The Helmut Marko era at Red Bull is over, and with it ends one of the most colorful chapters in modern Formula One history. Whether you loved him or hated him, there's no denying that Marko brought a unique perspective to the sport. His departure marks the end of an era and the beginning of a new, more corporate chapter for Red Bull racing. The question now is whether other teams will follow Red Bull's lead in prioritizing corporate culture over individual personalities. If they do, we might be witnessing the end of the larger-than-life characters that have always been part of Formula One's appeal. The sport might become more professional, but it could also become a lot less interesting. Imagine spending 5 years building your Formula One reputation, slowly proving yourself as a legitimate racing driver, only to watch it all crumble in just 22 races. That's exactly what happened to Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull Racing. And it's a story that reveals the brutal reality of what it means to be teammates with the fastest driver on the planet. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a devastating picture. When Red Bull made the decision to promote Tsunoda from their sister team to partner with Max Verstappen for the 2025 season, they essentially signed his Formula One death warrant. By the end of the year, the Japanese driver found himself without a seat for 2026, replaced by rising star Isaac Hadjar, and relegated to a reserve role. But this isn't just another story about driver musical chairs. This is about what happens when an already challenging environment becomes absolutely toxic for a driver's confidence and career trajectory. Let's rewind to understand how we got here. Tsunoda wasn't always the struggling driver we saw at Red Bull in 2025. After a rocky debut season in 2021, he had genuinely turned things around during his time with the Racing Bulls team. The organization had invested heavily in his development, requiring him to relocate closer to their Italian factory in Faenza, completely overhaul his fitness regime and dietary habits, and embrace the professional aspects of Formula One that many drivers find tedious but essential. By 2023 and 2024, that investment was paying dividends. Tsunoda was emerging as what many considered a seriously talented driver, someone who might never reach the absolute pinnacle of greatness, but could certainly establish himself as a solid, reliable performer in the sport's upper echelons. He had found his rhythm in a competitive Racing Bulls car, consistently delivering strong performances and proving he belonged in Formula One. Then came the fateful decision to promote him to Red Bull Racing. On paper, it might have seemed logical. The team had cycled through multiple drivers alongside Verstappen, burning through options with alarming regularity. Liam Lawson had imploded early in his stint, leaving Red Bull scrambling for alternatives. Tsunoda, having shown steady improvement and maturity, appeared to be the natural choice. But there was a fundamental problem that Red Bull seemed to overlook or willfully ignore. Tsunoda had already been passed over once before in favor of Lawson, a clear indication that the team harbored doubts about his suitability as Verstappen's partner. The decision to eventually promote him felt less like confidence in his abilities and more like desperation born from limited alternatives. The warning signs were there from the beginning. Verstappen operates in a unique environment at Red Bull, one that has been specifically tailored to his driving style and preferences over many years. The car setup, the team dynamics, even the psychological atmosphere within. The garage revolves around maximizing Max's performance. For any driver stepping into that ecosystem, the challenge isn't just about raw speed. It's about adapting to an environment where you're perpetually the second priority. What made Tsunoda's situation even more precarious was the impending end of Red Bull's partnership with Honda. As a Honda-backed driver, his value to the team was intrinsically linked to that relationship. Once Honda decided to move on, Tsunoda's position became increasingly tenuous, regardless of his on-track performance. This created a perfect storm where he needed to deliver exceptional results to justify his retention, while simultaneously operating in conditions that made such results nearly impossible to achieve. The psychological impact of partnering with Verstappen cannot be understated. Max doesn't just beat his teammates, he systematically dismantles them. It's not malicious or intentional, but the sheer gulf in performance creates a demoralizing environment that few drivers can withstand. We've seen it happen to multiple drivers over the years, each arriving with confidence and leaving with their reputations in tatters. Tsunoda himself hinted at the alternative reality that might have been. Speaking to media in Abu Dhabi, he expressed regret about leaving what he called a pretty good car at Racing Bulls. Imagine if he had remained there, continuing to develop and showcase his talents in a more supportive environment. Instead of watching Isaac Hadjar claim podiums and praise for Racing Bulls, it could have been Tsunoda enjoying those moments and building his reputation rather than watching it disintegrate. The timing of his career moves proved crucial and ultimately damaging. There had been rumors of interest from teams like Haas, particularly when the American squad came under the management of Ayao Komatsu, Tsunoda's compatriot. That could have been the perfect opportunity for him to establish himself outside the Red Bull ecosystem, working with a team principal who literally spoke his language and could have provided the mentorship he needed. But contractual obligations and perhaps a lack of foresight prevented Tsunoda from pursuing those opportunities aggressively. Like Carlos Sainz had done successfully in 2017, he could have been more forceful about taking control of his career destiny. Instead, he remained tethered to Red Bull, ultimately becoming another casualty of their driver development program. The irony is palpable. After years of patient development and genuine improvement, just 22 races alongside Verstappen were enough to undo all that progress. The driver who had been steadily building his reputation and proving his worth found himself cast aside, his confidence shattered and his future uncertain. This brings us to an interesting contrast with his replacement, Isaac Hadjar. The young French driver has taken a refreshingly realistic approach to the daunting task of partnering with Verstappen. Rather than arriving with bravado and unrealistic expectations, Hajar has already accepted that he will likely struggle initially. In conversations with media, Hajar demonstrated remarkable maturity in his outlook. He acknowledged that Verstappen is simply the best driver on the grid, and that the chances of immediately matching his pace are minimal. This psychological preparation might be exactly what's needed to survive in that environment. By accepting the inevitable early struggles, Hajar hopes to avoid the destructive spiral that has claimed so many of Verstappen's previous teammates. His strategy is to embrace the frustration that comes with studying data and seeing lap times that seem impossible to achieve. Rather than letting that destroy his confidence, he plans to use it as motivation for long-term improvement. It's a remarkably mature approach from a driver who hasn't even started his first season with the team. The contrast with how other drivers have approached the challenge is stark. Many arrive believing they can immediately challenge Verstappen, only to find themselves overwhelmed by the reality of the performance gap. The psychological damage from that realization often creates a downward spiral that becomes impossible to escape. What happened to Tsunoda serves as a cautionary tale about the broader Red Bull driver development system. While the organization has produced some exceptional talents, it has also destroyed numerous careers through its unforgiving approach. The pressure cooker environment that exists at the top level of the team isn't suitable for every driver, regardless of their talent level. The most tragic aspect of Tsunoda's story is how avoidable it was. Red Bull effectively acknowledged his unsuitability for the role when they initially passed him over for Lawson. They understood the risks involved in exposing him to the Verstappen environment, knowing it could undo years of careful development work. Yet they proceeded anyway, driven more by circumstance than conviction. Now, as we look toward 2026, Tsunoda finds himself in an increasingly difficult position. The Toyota partnership at Haas has likely closed off that avenue permanently, given his strong Honda connections. Other opportunities in the paddock are limited, and his reputation has undoubtedly taken a significant hit from his struggles at Red Bull. The broader implications of this situation extend beyond just one driver's career. It highlights the challenges facing the current Formula One driver market, where opportunities are scarce and one poor season can effectively end a career. For drivers caught in the Red Bull system, the path forward becomes even more treacherous when the ultimate benchmark is someone operating at Verstappen's level. Looking back, Tsunoda's time at Racing Bulls represented the peak of his Formula One journey so far. He had found his footing, demonstrated genuine improvement, and appeared to have a bright future ahead of him. The decision to leave that environment for the uncertainty of Red Bull racing will likely be remembered as the turning point that derailed his career trajectory. The harsh reality is that not every talented driver is suited to every environment. Tsunoda might have continued to flourish at Racing Bulls, building his reputation and potentially earning opportunities elsewhere based on sustained strong performance. Instead, he became another casualty in the ongoing saga of drivers who couldn't match Verstappen's extraordinary standards. This story serves as a reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in Formula One, and how important it is for drivers to carefully consider not just the prestige of an opportunity, but whether it truly serves their long-term career interests. Christian Horner, known for his dynamic leadership as the team principal for Oracle Red Bull, has been absent from the Formula One scene since his dismissal in July. But it seems that he's not done with the high-octane world of racing just yet. Reports are emerging that Horner is planning a comeback to Formula One, and this time he's adding a unique twist to his return. While his firing dealt a significant blow, it hasn't dampened his passion for the sport. Instead, Horner is preparing to re-enter the arena, bringing with him a wealth of experience and perhaps a fresh perspective. The excitement surrounding his potential return is palpable, and fans are buzzing with speculation about what he might bring to the table. Could this twist in his career signify a different role in Formula One? As the racing world eagerly anticipates his next move, the question remains: how will Horner's presence reshuffle the dynamics within the teams and the sport as a whole? With the 2026 season on the horizon, The potential for innovation and rivalry is endless. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into what this could mean for Horner and the future of Formula One racing. As we explore the shifting dynamics within Formula One, let's talk about the intriguing situation surrounding Christian Horner. After 2 decades with Red Bull Racing, his departure marked a significant turning point for both him and the team. Initially, he found himself under scrutiny due to an internal investigation, though he was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing. However, it was not just the investigation that led to his exit. Internal tensions and a noticeable dip in performance from Verstappen's car catalyzed the decision to part ways with Horner. The irony here is striking. Shortly after Horner's departure, Verstappen seemed to regain his competitive edge, vying fiercely for what would have been his 5th consecutive world championship. In fact, he fought valiantly right up until the final race of the season, ultimately finishing 2nd in the Drivers' Championship. This swift turnaround raised eyebrows and speculation about what Horner's firing meant for the dynamics of the team. Even as whispers of Horner's return grew louder, they echoed through the paddocks of F1. Reports have suggested multiple potential landing spots for him, with teams like Ferrari and Aston Martin being thrown into the mix. Yet, now it appears that Horner has set his sights on a return by 2026 with Alpine. Alpine, a team closely linked to the Renault Group, possesses a unique ownership structure. Among its stakeholders is Otro Capital, which has attracted a roster of high-profile celebrities and athletes, including boxer Anthony Joshua, golfer Rory McIlroy, and actor Ryan Reynolds. This blend of sports and entertainment brings a vibrant energy to the team, suggesting a promising future on the grid. Transitioning to Alpine could signify a new chapter not just for Horner, but for the team itself. Given the changes on the horizon for the 2026 F1 season, including a shift towards more sustainable technologies and new competitive challenges, Horner's experience could be invaluable. His strategic insights and leadership style have proven effective in the high-pressure world of Formula One, and he could be the catalyst that propels Alpine into the upper echelon of racing teams. As he potentially prepares to return, one has to wonder, will he be able to replicate the success he achieved with Red Bull? Or will he carve out a new legacy with Alpine, transforming them into a formidable contender? The coming seasons promise to be fascinating as these narratives unfold. In conclusion, whether it's with Alpine or another team, the return of Christian Horner could ignite a new rivalry and shake up the existing order of Formula One. With the excitement building around the 2026 season, motorsport fans have much to look forward to. Keep your eyes peeled as we follow these developments. Who knows what the future holds for Horner and the teams he may influence? Stay with us for more updates on this thrilling journey. In a surprising twist, Christian Horner finds himself in the spotlight as Otro Capital looks to sell their minority stake in the Alpine Formula One team. Rumors are swirling that Horner, backed by a group of investors, is eyeing a purchase that could change the course of the team. If successful, Horner wouldn't just become an owner, he'd also take on the role of team principal, similar to Toto Wolff's influential position at Mercedes. When pressed for details by De Telegraaf, Horner remained tight-lipped, neither confirming nor denying ongoing discussions with Renault or Alpine. Meanwhile, Alpine has chosen to abstain from providing any comment, leaving fans and analysts alike craving more information. Horner's potential involvement with Alpine would certainly be a significant undertaking. Currently, Alpine is navigating a challenging period, having finished last in the 2025 Constructors' Championship with just 22 points. With a new season on the horizon, the team is set to make crucial changes, including a switch to Mercedes power plants in 2026, marking the end of their relationship with Renault. As we keep our eyes on this unfolding situation, one thing is clear. Whether it's steering through highs or lows, Horner is no stranger to the challenges of F1. The stakes are high, and the implications of these shifts could reshape the future of not just Alpine, but the entire sport. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates on this exciting journey. Picture this: A young driver steps into Formula One with the weight of replacing a 7-time world champion on his shoulders. The spotlight burns bright. Expectations soar through the roof. And then something unexpected happens. The very circuits he thought he knew best become his biggest challenge. This is the fascinating story of Kimi Antonelli's rookie season, and why sometimes knowing too much can actually hurt your performance. What if I told you that familiarity could be your enemy? That walking into a situation thinking you have all the answers might actually set you up for spectacular failure? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most intriguing psychological phenomena in motorsport, using Kimi Antonelli's roller coaster 2025 season as our case study. When Mercedes announced that 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli would replace Lewis Hamilton, the motorsport world held its breath. This wasn't just any seat. This was the throne left vacant by one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. The pressure was immense, but Antonelli seemed ready for the challenge. His start couldn't have been more promising. Australia delivered a stunning 4th-place finish in treacherous conditions that would have broken lesser drivers. The kid had ice in his veins, they said. 5 strong points finishes in the opening 6 races painted the picture of a future superstar finding his feet with remarkable speed. The highlight came at Miami, where he secured his first pole position in sprint qualifying, announcing himself as a genuine contender. But then something strange happened. As the season moved to Europe, the wheels began to come off in the most unexpected way. These weren't unfamiliar circuits to Antonelli. Quite the opposite. These were tracks he had conquered during his climb through the junior categories. He knew every corner, every braking point, every racing line, or so he thought. The Canadian Grand Prix provided a brief respite with a maiden podium finish, but it was like finding an oasis in an increasingly barren desert of disappointment. Race after race, the points dried up. It wasn't until Hungary that Antonelli would taste points again, and by then, something had fundamentally shifted in the young Italian's psyche. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Andrew Chauvelin, Mercedes's head of trackside engineering, revealed something that completely changes how we understand performance psychology in high-pressure environments. The problem wasn't that Antonelli didn't know these European circuits. The problem was that he thought he did. Think about this for a moment. When you walk into a situation believing you should excel, what happens when reality doesn't match your expectations? Your brain goes into overdrive trying to reconcile the gap between what should be happening and what actually is happening. This is exactly what started plaguing Antonelli. The young driver began what Chauvelin described as overdriving, pushing beyond the limits of both himself and the car, in a desperate attempt to find the performance he believed should come naturally. It's a vicious cycle that many athletes fall into. The harder you try to force success, the more elusive it becomes. Meanwhile, something fascinating was happening on the circuits Antonelli had never seen before. Without the burden of expectation, without the assumption that he should automatically be fast, he approached these weekends with a beginner's mind. No preconceived notions, no pressure to immediately deliver, just pure learning and adaptation. The contrast was stark and revealing. On familiar tracks, Antonelli was fighting ghosts of his own making, battling expectations that existed only in his head. On new circuits, he was free to discover, to learn, to gradually build up to speed without the crushing weight of assumed competence. This phenomenon extends far beyond motorsport. How many times have you struggled with something you thought should be easy, only to excel when facing completely new challenges? It's the difference between assumption and discovery, between pressure and freedom. The turning point came during the summer break. Something clicked for Antonelli, or perhaps more accurately, something was released. The realization that knowing a circuit from junior categories meant very little when wrestling with a completely different beast of a machine seemed to liberate him from his own expectations. What followed was nothing short of remarkable. The back half of the season saw a completely different driver emerge. Not only did Antonelli return to consistent point scoring, but he began showing flashes of the speed that had made Mercedes believe in him in the first place. Podium finishes in Brazil and Las Vegas weren't just personal victories. They were validation that the talent was always there, just temporarily buried under the weight of misplaced confidence. Perhaps most tellingly, Antonelli began outperforming his experienced teammate George Russell at several events. Here was a rookie, supposedly still learning, showing a clean pair of heels to a driver with years of Formula One experience. The student had become the teacher, but only after learning the hardest lesson of all, that true confidence comes from embracing uncertainty, not avoiding it. Chauvelin's insights into Antonelli's development reveal the intricate psychology of elite performance. The ability to describe exactly what the car was doing had always been there. Antonelli's technical feedback was exceptional from day one, but understanding how to extract maximum performance from both machine and himself required a complete recalibration of approach. The details are fascinating. Learning when to push and when to hold back, understanding how tire temperatures affect performance throughout an entire lap, grasping the mental preparation required for different types of sessions. These aren't skills you can learn in a simulator or transfer from junior categories. They require real-world experience, failure, and most importantly, the humility to admit you don't know everything. One particularly revealing example came at Suzuka, where new tarmac demanded high tire temperatures at turn 1. This wasn't just about technical knowledge, it was about having the confidence to throw it in and trust that the grip would materialize. For someone used to being cautious and building up to speed, this represented a fundamental shift in approach. The tire development aspect adds another layer to this story. Despite extensive testing in previous cars, the Academy tires used in these sessions had completely different characteristics than race weekend compounds. What seemed like preparation was actually creating false expectations about how the car would behave when it really mattered. This highlights something crucial about high-level performance. The devil truly is in the details. Small differences in equipment, conditions, or circumstances can completely change the equation, but only experience teaches you how to adapt. Antonelli's struggles weren't a sign of lacking talent, but rather proof of just how complex Formula One really is. The psychological transformation that occurred during Antonelli's European struggles offers valuable lessons for anyone facing high-pressure situations. The expectation of immediate success based on past performance can become a prison of your own making. Sometimes the fastest route to improvement is acknowledging that you're starting from zero, regardless of what your resume might suggest. What makes Antonelli's story even more compelling is how it sets him up for the future. Formula One is undergoing massive regulation changes for 2026, with revolutions in both chassis and power unit technology. In this environment, previous experience becomes less valuable, and the ability to adapt quickly becomes paramount. Chauvelin identified something particularly relevant about younger drivers like Antonelli: their comfort with simulation technology and ability to multitask while driving. Growing up gaming has given them mental capacity to think strategically while handling the physical demands of racing. This isn't just about reflexes or hand-eye coordination. It's about cognitive flexibility. The preparation aspect cannot be overstated. As Antonelli's season progressed, the importance of mental preparation became clear. Understanding what each session demands, knowing where the challenges will emerge, maintaining focus on the right priorities. These elements separate good drivers from great ones. Looking back at Antonelli's rookie season, the European struggles weren't a detour from success. They were an essential part of the journey. The assumption that familiarity breeds competence proved false, but the lesson learned was invaluable. True mastery comes not from knowing what you think you know, but from remaining open to discovering what you don't. The irony is beautiful in its simplicity. A driver who thought he knew European circuits had to learn them all over again, not as the junior category racer he once was, but as the Formula One driver he was becoming. The tracks hadn't changed, but everything else had. This transformation speaks to something fundamental about human psychology and performance. We often carry forward assumptions from previous experiences without realizing how much the context has changed. What worked before might not work now, And clinging to old patterns can prevent us from discovering new possibilities. Antonelli's story is ultimately one of resilience and adaptation. The ability to recognize when your approach isn't working, make necessary adjustments, and emerge stronger represents the kind of mental toughness that separates champions from the merely talented. The struggles in Europe weren't signs of weakness. They were growing pains disguised as setbacks. As we look toward the future, Antonelli's journey offers hope for anyone facing similar challenges. The path to excellence is rarely linear, and sometimes the biggest obstacles come from our own expectations, rather than external circumstances. The key is maintaining the courage to admit when you're wrong and the wisdom to learn from every failure. The European slump that could have derailed a promising career instead became the foundation for genuine growth. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a young talent is discovering they don't know as much as they thought they did. It's humbling, it's painful, but ultimately, it's liberating. Kimi Antonelli's rookie season reminds us that expertise isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and remaining open to unexpected solutions. The circuits he thought he knew taught him the most valuable lesson of all. True confidence comes not from familiarity, but from the ability to adapt when familiarity fails you. What happens when the greatest Formula One designer of our generation sits down with Honda's racing boss for their first meeting at Aston Martin? They burst out laughing. But behind those laughs lies something much more serious, a partnership that could reshape the entire sport. The Formula One world is buzzing with whispers about Adrian Newey's reunion with Honda at Aston Martin, and what we're learning about their working relationship might just explain why everyone should be terrified of what's coming in 2026. Because when two masterminds who've already conquered Formula One together get back to business, the results could be explosive. Let's talk about what's really happening behind closed doors at Aston Martin right now. Adrian Newey, the man who's designed more championship-winning cars than anyone else in modern Formula One, has officially taken the reins as team principal for 2026. But here's where it gets interesting. He's not working alone. He's reunited with Koji Watanabe, the president of Honda Racing Corporation, the same partnership that dominated Formula One from 2021 to 2023. When these two legends met again at Aston Martin earlier this year, Watanabe revealed they couldn't help themselves. They immediately started laughing, with that classic moment of recognition where they both thought, well, here we are again. But what happened next tells us everything we need to know about what's brewing at Aston Martin. Watanabe has now pulled back the curtain on what it's really like working with Adrian Newey day to day, and his description should send shivers down the spine of every rival team. He describes their conversations as quite intense exchanges of opinions, suggestions, and feedback. Now, when someone describes working with Adrian Newey as intense, you know something special is happening. Think about this for a moment. These aren't casual coffee conversations about the weather. We're talking about the most successful car designer in Formula One history, having regular heated discussions with the boss of one of the most powerful engine manufacturers in motorsport. Every single conversation is laser-focused on one thing: winning. But here's what makes this partnership so dangerous for the competition. Watanabe explains that these intense discussions cover everything from the tiniest design details to massive strategic decisions about competitor analysis, personnel management, and even how to maximize every penny under the cost cap regulations. This isn't just about building a fast car. This is about building a complete racing organization designed to dominate. The timing couldn't be more perfect either. The 2026 Formula One regulations represent the biggest shakeup in the sport's technical rules in decades. New power unit regulations, completely redesigned aerodynamic concepts, and fresh opportunities for innovation. It's exactly the kind of challenge that brings out the best in Adrian Newey. Remember what happened the last time Formula One introduced major regulation changes? Back in 2022, when the ground effect rules came in, Newey initially seemed skeptical. Then he quietly admitted the regulations offered more flexibility for innovation and different approaches than first meets the eye. What happened next? Red Bull absolutely demolished the competition, winning 15 out of 22 races in the first season under those rules. Now Newey is saying almost exactly the same thing about the 2026 regulations. He's spotted something that others might be missing. Former world champion Damon Hill, who won his title driving a Newey-designed Williams, summed it up perfectly on social media with just 3 words. He's found something. The scary part for rival teams is that we're still months away from seeing what Newey and Honda have been cooking up together. The AMR26 car won't be officially launched until February 9th, and even then, teams have been asked to run temporary liveries during the first preseason test. The real reveal won't come until the Bahrain tests in February. But here's what we do know. Newey has been leading the development of the AMR26 since day one of joining Aston Martin. Meanwhile, Honda has been developing their 2026 power unit according to their own proven processes and timetables. The magic happens where these two elements meet, and Watanabe confirms they're communicating constantly at that crucial intersection. This isn't just about technical collaboration either. The organizational changes at Aston Martin tell their own story. Current team boss Andy Cowell is moving into a chief strategy officer role, specifically to manage the three-way relationship between Aston Martin, Honda, and fuel supplier Aramco. That's not a coincidence. That's the structure of a team preparing for total war. The Honda connection adds another layer of intrigue. This is the same engine manufacturer that powered Max Verstappen to 4 consecutive world championships. They know what it takes to build championship-winning power units, and they've proven they can do it under the current hybrid regulations. Now they're adapting that expertise for the completely new 2026 power unit rules. What makes this partnership even more formidable is the personal relationship between Newey and Watanabe. These aren't two strangers trying to figure out how to work together. They've already proven they can collaborate at the highest level. They understand each other's working styles, they respect each other's expertise, and most importantly, they share the same relentless focus on winning. The intensity of their working relationship actually makes perfect sense when you consider what's at stake. The 2026 season represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reset the competitive order in Formula One. Get it right, and you could dominate for years. Get it wrong, and you're playing catch-up while others disappear into the distance. Every conversation between Newey and Watanabe could be the difference between finding that extra tenth of a second that separates winners from also-rans. When you're operating at the absolute pinnacle of motorsport, where margins are measured in thousandths of seconds, intense discussions aren't just normal, they're essential. The broader implications for Formula One could be massive. If Newey and Honda have indeed found something special in the 2026 regulations, we could be looking at the start of another period of dominance, similar to what we saw with Red Bull from 2021 to 2023. The sport thrives on unpredictability, but it also has a history of rewarding the teams that make the biggest breakthroughs when new regulations arrive. For Aston Martin, this represents the culmination of years of investment and ambition. Lawrence Stroll has poured resources into building world-class facilities, hiring top talent, and positioning the team for exactly this moment. Landing Adrian Newey was the final piece of the puzzle, and reuniting him with Honda creates a partnership with a proven track record of success. The competition certainly isn't standing still. Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren all have their own plans for 2026, their own interpretations of the new regulations, and their own advantages to exploit. But none of them can replicate the specific combination of Newey's design genius and Honda's engineering excellence, working in perfect harmony. As we count down to the 2026 season, every piece of information about what's happening at Aston Martin becomes more significant. The fact that Newey and Watanabe are having intense daily discussions about every aspect of performance suggests they're leaving nothing to chance. They're building something designed to win from day one. The laughs they shared in that first meeting might have been about nostalgia and friendship, but make no mistake about what's happening now. This is serious business, with serious implications for the future of Formula One. When the AMR26 finally takes to the track, we'll discover whether those intense exchanges have produced something truly special. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most experienced drivers just revealed the secret weapon that could completely shake up the 2026 season? Carlos Sainz, fresh off his impressive debut year with Williams, has identified what he calls a huge performance differentiator that most fans are completely overlooking. And trust me, this isn't what you think it is. Picture this scenario. You're Carlos Sainz. You've just left Ferrari, one of the most prestigious teams in motorsport, to join Williams, a team that many considered a backmarker. Everyone questioned your decision. The critics were brutal, but then something magical happened. You delivered 2 podium finishes and helped propel Williams to their best season in nearly a decade, securing 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. Now, as the sport prepares for the most dramatic regulation changes in recent memory, Sainz has his sights set on something that could revolutionize Williams' fortunes. And it's not what most people are talking about. The Spanish driver recently opened up about his excitement for the upcoming 2026 season, and his comments reveal a fascinating insight into what really matters when everything changes. While most discussions about the new regulations focus on aerodynamics and chassis design, Sainz has identified a completely different area that could be the game changer. Let me paint you a picture of what's coming in 2026. Formula One is implementing the most comprehensive regulation overhaul we've seen in years. New power units, completely redesigned chassis, and fundamental changes to how these incredible machines operate. It's essentially a complete reset for every team on the grid. Everything you know about current Formula One performance is about to be thrown out the window. But here's where it gets interesting. While teams are pouring millions into aerodynamic research and chassis development, Sainz believes the real battleground will be somewhere else entirely. He's convinced that the power unit will be the crucial differentiator that separates the winners from the also-rans. Think about it from his perspective. Williams has a long-standing partnership with Mercedes for their power units. Team principal James Vowles spent years as a senior figure at Mercedes before taking the helm at Williams. This relationship runs deep, and Sainz sees it as a massive advantage that many people are underestimating. The 31-year-old driver expressed his enthusiasm about finally having input into the fundamental design philosophy of a new car from the ground up. This represents a unique opportunity in his career. For the first time in his sophomore season with Williams, he'll be able to influence not just setup preferences, but the actual direction the team takes with their 2026 challenger. Sainz emphasized how critical it will be to have experienced drivers working closely with Mercedes' high-performance powertrains on software development. He believes that having 2 seasoned drivers like himself and Alex Albon providing feedback could give Williams a significant edge in optimizing their power unit performance. But here's what makes this situation truly fascinating. The power unit regulations for 2026 are dramatically different from what we have today. The hybrid systems are being completely overhauled, with increased electrical power and reduced internal combustion engine output. This creates an entirely new playing field where traditional power unit hierarchies might be completely disrupted. Sainz understands that success in 2026 won't just be about having the most powerful engine. It's about having the most efficiently integrated power unit system, with software and hardware working in perfect harmony. This is where Williams' partnership with Mercedes could prove invaluable. The relationship between Williams and Mercedes goes beyond just a customer-team arrangement. With Vowles' deep connections and understanding of Mercedes' engineering philosophy, Williams has access to insights and collaboration opportunities that other customer teams might not enjoy. This could translate into earlier access to power unit development data, more comprehensive software support, and deeper integration between chassis and power unit design. However, Sainz remains refreshingly realistic about the challenges ahead. He acknowledges that the massive regulation changes create enormous uncertainty for every team. Even the most successful organizations could get these new rules completely wrong, while previously struggling teams might discover the perfect formula. The Spanish driver reflected on Williams' recent progress, noting that if the regulations had remained stable, he would feel much more confident about their trajectory. The team had shown they could compete within a few tenths of pole position and race pace in several events throughout the season. With stable regulations, he believed Williams could continue making incremental improvements over the next few years to eventually challenge for race wins. But 2026 represents a complete reset. Every engineer, every driver, every team will be starting from scratch with these new regulations. This creates both enormous opportunity and significant risk. Teams that nail the new formula early could establish a dominant advantage, while those who struggle might find themselves falling further behind. What makes Sainz's perspective particularly valuable is his experience across multiple top teams. He's seen how Ferrari operates, he's worked with different power unit philosophies, and now he's experiencing Williams' approach to development. This breadth of experience gives him unique insights into what actually matters when everything changes. The driver emphasized that success in 2026 will require teams to stay focused and manage their expectations carefully. The temptation will be to make bold predictions or dramatic changes, but Sainz believes the teams that remain methodical and patient in their approach will ultimately prevail. His comments about the power unit being a huge factor aren't just speculation. In previous major regulation changes, teams that got their power unit integration right often enjoyed sustained periods of success. Think about Mercedes' dominance in the hybrid era that began in 2014, largely built on their superior power unit technology. Williams' partnership with Mercedes puts them in a unique position to capitalize on this advantage. Unlike teams developing their own power units from scratch, Williams can focus their resources entirely on chassis development while relying on proven Mercedes power unit technology. The collaboration between Sainz, Albon, and the Mercedes HPP team could create a feedback loop that benefits everyone involved. The drivers provide real-world performance insights, Mercedes incorporates this data into their power unit development, and Williams benefits from having the most optimized power unit package possible. Looking ahead to the pre-season testing period, Sainz expressed his eagerness to see how all these elements come together. The first time teams fire up their 2026 cars will be a moment of truth that could reshape the entire competitive order in Formula One. For Williams, this represents their best opportunity in years to establish themselves as consistent frontrunners. With Sainz's experience, Albon's speed, and their Mercedes partnership, they have all the ingredients necessary to succeed under these new regulations. The upcoming season promises to be one of the most unpredictable in Formula One history. When the dust settles and we see which teams have mastered the new formula, don't be surprised if Williams and their Mercedes power unit advantage emerge as one of the biggest success stories of the regulation change.